I really hope that more entrepreneurs and, CEOs start fessing up. I mean, you don't have to put it on a billboard, but tell somebody who cares and can help you, you're not okay. And then put your heads together about what you need to become okay again, because you might feel like you're falling apart, but there's always a way to put you back together. And you might put yourself back together even stronger than you were before.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited. We have a special guest. And actually, she's back for the second time because her first time was so impactful on our show. And this is Kelly Sullivan Ruta. I'm so excited to have Kelly here back with us. Now, Kelly, from what you guys remember last time, she is a CEO development strategist, and she specializes in really teaching service-based entrepreneurs how to make fundamental psychological shifts that create exponential growth in your business. Kelly is very unique because, why you hear all this stuff about mindset. Kelly is actually the real deal. Okay. I have worked with Kelly. She is amazing. And Kelly is actually, her background is in psychology. She actually has a master's degree in social work. And she also has a postgraduate certificate in substance abuse counselor, by the way, with all honor. So she's a brainiac too. Now, she's worked with the Women's Leadership Initiative at McDonald's, as well as Novartis Pharmaceuticals. And also she's worked with other online businesses, Ruta 9 to the 5, Epic at Sales, as well as Heart Behind Bustle. Now, Kelly has a very special title. She is also the mindset expert faculty member of the Profit First Professionals. So she works with Mike Michalowicz and us Profit First Professionals, meaning that we're broken, she cracks our eggs and she fixes us, and also she speaks live. She goes on virtual stages, and really she compels CEOs to develop themselves as strategically as they do their business initiatives. So I'm excited. Please join me in welcoming Kelly Ruta to our stage today. Hey, Kelly, how are you?
Hi, thank you. That was quite a welcome. My goodness. Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I'm just honored that you asked me back a second time. I can't wait to dive into our conversation today.
Oh, yeah. Our first conversation was so deep. I said, what? Let's talk about the things that nobody talks about today. And this is a really important conversation. I feel like we don't talk about it enough in this world. And, I mentioned a little bit in my book about the entrepreneur depression, right? That reality of entrepreneur depression from all that highs and lows. And, and it's interesting because when I actually discover this is when I started working with Kelly. And, this is very easy to happen. It's just the highs and lows. And, I'm actually going to go ahead and talk to Kelly and have her describe what entrepreneurship depression is.
Yeah. So I love that you're talking about this, that we can be open and vulnerable and really start normalizing some of the experiences that entrepreneurs and business owners go through, but also start using words like depression without apology or shame or justification. So a couple of things. Number one, I know because of the statistics about mental health, that there are a lot of us who go into business ownership and entrepreneurship who already have things like trauma or anxiety or depression or substance abuse in our backgrounds prior to becoming business owners. Then there's another whole subset of people who get into this work, which is particularly challenging on lots of different levels, sometimes 10 different levels in a single day, it seems like. And some symptoms will start to emerge. Now, some of those symptoms are diagnosable and some are not. So it's really important to understand that, number one, first, I don't diagnose anymore. So just note, it is important that, that is not the position I'm in anymore. That's not what I do anymore. And it's not ethical to diagnose from afar. Meaning if somebody came on today and was talking about depression, I couldn't say, oh, I'm going to diagnose you with this. But what I would say is, if somebody presents with a bunch of symptoms and it's enough that it's starting to interrupt the quality of your daily life or your ability to perform daily activities, that's time to go speak to a clinical mental health professional to see if you meet the criteria for a diagnosis of depression. So there'll be a bunch of people that do meet that. There will also be a bunch of entrepreneurs who are just going through a really challenging experience growing their businesses, growing themselves as leaders, as CEOs. It is an incredibly taxing experience. It's a very rewarding and wonderful experience as well. But there's a lot of risk taking. There's a lot of, oh, this is wonderful, just to be followed by, oh my gosh, I feel like I just crashed and burned. And an hour ago, I was feeling great. And there's a lot of funny memes, that exist on social media about this, what everybody thinks entrepreneurship is. And it's just the sharp ascent to greatness, when in reality, it's more like a roller coaster ride. So I really love the fact that we're sort of normalizing that the journey for a business owner and an entrepreneur has a lot of ups and downs. And sometimes that experience can really trigger things like anxiety and depression in business owners.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, as entrepreneurs, right, especially in that scaling level where you're no longer that party of one, which a lot of our audience, are in that 500,000 and above revenue line, you're responsible for the livelihood of others, right?
Yes.
And with each level, there's a new devil, right? And
Always.
Unfortunately, you look to the right, you look to the left, and most people, have not been in that place before. And so a lot of it is facing it alone. And so, Callie, when someone finds themselves really struggling with entrepreneurial poverty, right? Or not necessarily poverty, but mindset, right? Or depression, what are some things that we can do in order to tackle that? Like, what are the steps and procedures that need to happen in order to start getting up and on our way?
So that's a great question. And there are probably more things than I could list in this entire episode, but I would love for people to have a handful of things to walk away and think about, and then choose a few to take action on. So number one, and this especially goes for the women in your audience, because in my almost 27 years of experience, I have found that women have more difficulty with this than men. And that is stepping forward and saying, you know what? I actually need help with this. So everything changed for me when I shifted my mindset from being a solopreneur, which I was really sort of used to as a therapist. I owned an agency and there were, people working for me, but I was running the entire show, really not with a lot of support, right? But when I stepped into a wonderful mastermind with other people who were as ambitious as I am, who were as willing to be vulnerable as I was, and who were willing to collaborate and lift each other up instead of competing and undercutting each other, my entire perspective changed. And I realized very quickly that a lot of things that I had been taught about being really kind of hyper independent were counterproductive to growing a business. So once you hit that $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 level, and you're looking to maybe double that, triple that, 5x that, whatever, you realize very, very quickly, you are not going to do that by yourself. You need a team of A players who are with you every step of the way, which means you have to level up your A game as a leader. You have to learn how to vet, to hire, to onboard, to mentor, to grow your team. That's not a skill a lot of us came into the game with. I know as a therapist, other than training therapists in training, that wasn't really something I knew how to do. They certainly didn't teach me that in graduate school. So there is a steep learning curve. And when you can learn in a safe environment with other people like you, it will really speed that up. So that's number one, is if any part of you is still stuck in that solopreneur mentality, you pull it up by the root and get on the bandwagon that we go, faster and further when we go together. So that would be number one. Number two is address really what I like to call the biggest entrepreneurial mistake that I see, which is you're putting 80 to 90% of your time, money, and energy into strategy and tactics instead of into your own development as a brave, empowered leader of a company, of a team, of a group of clients. That is a huge mistake that people continue to make. So they're investing and investing and investing in strategy and tactics, which is important. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying shift how much you are doing that, and make sure that you're making a solid investment in your own self as a powerful leader, which means you're working with qualified professionals who know how to safely walk you through your own psyche, your own mindset, your own habits and behaviors, your own unconscious beliefs, so you can reprogram, rewire, break habits, replace them in a way that doesn't completely shake you to your core and make you unable to show up. Because it's vulnerable work. You've done it with me. It's not always fun. It is certainly not always easy. And vulnerability is something, it's much like bravery. It's a muscle that we have to really flex and build and practice. So doing it with an expert in a safe environment is a really, really important investment. And then the third thing is, and I cannot impress this upon your listeners enough. If you still have any foot in the game, skin in the game, foot through the door, whatever any of those phrases are, that lead you to believe that rest and self-care is earned versus required, you need to leave that, walk away from it today. There is nobody standing at whatever your finish line is for this business, whether you retire, you sell it, you just close your doors, you hand it down to your kid, whatever. There's nobody standing at the finish line clapping for you, struggling and not taking good care of yourself along the way. Rest is a high performance requirement. Refilling your cup is a high performance requirement. Self-care is not fluffy. It's also not like, I'm going to take a bath and paint my nails. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying that's not it. We need to take that so much deeper. If we're going to run healthy companies, we have to be healthy leaders.
Definitely. And, I think that was, when I worked with Kelly, I came in through her Beyond Limitless program. And to be with other entrepreneurs, right, that were going through similar situations, right, making similar decisions, be able to bounce off of those ideas in a safe environment, right, that's a priceless experience. So it's very important to be in the room with people that can help you, and to be able to do that with someone that's not only has experience working with entrepreneurs, but really has that neural background to that psychology background, right? To help you, I'm gonna call it woman up, right? In those situations where you need to make some serious changes, right? Because, as you grow and scale, you're not this team that you started with, it's not going to be the team that you're going to end up with, right? Because each level has a new devil, right? And you're going to have to make some hard decisions about reallocating resources, potentially reallocating people, and to have that sphere where you can bounce those ideas off as tremendous and priceless with that too. So very, very good points with that. Now, Kelly, I know a lot of people are dealing with this COVID and this pandemic, right?
Oof.
And every day is different than the last, right? Just when we think we're out and we're heading towards the beach, we find out there's a Delta variant or a Mu variant coming. Suddenly, we're reversed back into that. And in some ways, as an entrepreneur, that can feel like a bit of a cloud, right? That can feel as a bit of a cloud. And how do we deal with that? What are some tips that we can deal with this pandemic that will come to an end, right? It will come to an end, but, it affects us in our moments, right?
It does. And it won't be the last thing that we deal with in our lifetimes, right? Whether another pandemic comes along or you're living, listening to this, living in a place that has political upheaval or is maybe not a terribly safe community for you to live in. There's always something that we are going to have to respond to, and that we will have to bolster our businesses to thrive in spite of. What's been challenging, one of the 7 million things that's been challenging about this pandemic, is that there were a lot of predictions that did not come to pass. And there were some things, like a lot of us thought, oh gosh, this is going to be over sooner than it actually was. And that's because viruses mutate. That's what they do. And I think really what's been challenging psychologically for a lot of people is that we're very adaptable. People are incredibly adaptable, but it has felt quite often like you will stand up after being knocked down from a wave, steady yourself barely with enough time before the next wave comes and knocks you down. And I think that this has really been a time for people to take some serious inventory, not just of their financial situation, not just of their profit account and their allocations and things like that, but also of their emotional intelligence, their support system, their mental health, their physical health, lots of things. So if you've not taken the time to do that, I strongly suggest that you do, because you may be in very good financial health, but maybe your physical health isn't great. And a pandemic is a really good time to get that physical house in order if possible. Same thing with your mental health. This is incredibly stressful. We are built to handle acute stress, but chronic stress, we are not built to handle that terribly well. So a lot of people, their mental health is taking a huge hit right now. And you deserve to have mental wellness, and your business needs you to be mentally stable and mentally well. So I think it's a really important time to do that. The next thing I would say is it's a great time to go back to the beginning, to go back and shore up why you started this quote unquote crazy journey to begin with. And are you still in alignment with what matters to you? Because look, we put our heads down, we make a million decisions a day. Sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes we have to start over. Sometimes we have to make a hard right turn. We're in it all the time. And sometimes we forget to just lift our heads up for a second, take a deep breath, and look all the way around. So something I'm reminding my clients to do right now is remember why. What is it you deeply, deeply desired when you decided you were going to basically birth this business? Was it time freedom? Was it money freedom? Was it leaving a legacy, making an impact, all of the above? And take a look at where you are today. Are the decisions you're making aligned with all of that? Or did you just get lost in the everyday execution and just kind of keeping your head above water? So it's a great time to sort of bring yourself back in alignment with those things that actually matter. I cannot remember if I said this on the last episode, but I was sick with COVID for a long time. I was in bed for little over 7 weeks. And I still, as of the time of recording this, I am 14 months out from my diagnosis, and I still have symptoms. So I have long haul COVID, and I'm probably going to need to see some specialists because it's been a long time. The gift of this for me is it has brought so many of my priorities into laser focus. And so for me, it's, having financial stability, having lots of time and space so that I can take really good care of myself, my health, and my family, and making sure that I'm doing work in the world that makes an actual difference. Other than that, I will let everything else go. So if it's not aligned with those things, I kind of don't care about it right now. Do you know what I mean? This has been such an interesting and powerful outcome from getting so sick. And so can you let this challenging time bring you back into focus? And lastly is there seems to be, especially, I see this everywhere, but it's particularly prevalent in the online space. And that is sort of the silent wall of shame that people hide behind on social media and other places, like, I've got it all together. Everything is fine. And I really wish people would start practicing the mantra that it's okay for me to not be okay right now. It's okay for you to say, I'm not okay right now, and I'm going to do something about it. There's no shame in that. And as a matter of fact, just you asking shows how brave and resilient you are. So I wish and I hope, if somebody needed to hear this today, good. But I really hope that more entrepreneurs and CEOs start fessing up. I mean, you don't have to put it on a billboard, but tell your doctor, tell your pastor, tell your counselor, tell your spouse, tell somebody who cares and can help you, you're not okay. And then put your heads together about what you need to become okay again, because you might feel like you're falling apart, but there's always a way to put you back together. And you might put yourself back together even stronger than you were before.
I love that, Kelly. And I remember when we were working together, and a lot of different things happened during that time. One of our really good friends lost their child, who was the age of my son, who was, under 5 at that time. And, it was, pretty traumatic of an experience. And, at the same time, we were doing a lot of shifts in the company because, we were going to a different level, right? We were going towards that 7-figure mark, and a lot of things couldn't continue the same way as it was. And one of the things that you told me was, you have to look for the gift in it, right? You have to look in the gift of every experience. And, what I found is, when you're going through those low of lows, that's usually when there's the biggest gift, right? There's the biggest gift on the other side. And, and for me, it was, getting back to the why, the why I started this business, what was important to me, what was the work that I wanted to do in this world, particularly, and making sure my life was aligned. And so that's extremely a valuable advice, about looking for the gift in everything, even in the midst of COVID, there's a gift.
There is. And it's not to say that there isn't pain and tragedy and trauma. There's a lot of coaches out there that do a tremendous amount of damage because of all this spiritual bypassing nonsense. Like, we're going to act like the awful thing isn't there and just talk about the blessings. And I think that that's really harmful. So the way I talk about it is basically what you just said. We're not going to act like that wasn't traumatic and absolutely devastating and destabilizing for that child to pass. But while you're processing that, when you can come up for air, we're going to begin to give your brain and your mind evidence of things to feel hopeful about, things that will actually come of this that are of great benefit or value. And, this is what human beings do. We look for meaning in things. That's what we do that animals don't do. So it's important that it's not an either or situation. Either it's tragic or there's a gift. There's both going on simultaneously. And I think that when you allow yourself to go through both the lows and the highs, that's how you come out a more emotionally mature, but also wise person. And we really, really need wisdom, I think, on the planet right now, not just intellect, but real deep wisdom to draw from.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's amazing just the divide and the leadership these days. It's just absolutely amazing with that. I know from our time working together, so many things came about with it, like creating the dream team happened, so many things like literally came in, and my team is like, you're not working on Fridays anymore. I'm like, oh no, that's not why we started this business.
That's right. That's right.
But definitely that is so important with that. A lot of times, Kelly, one of the things that I get for entrepreneurs is, during the midst of this pandemic, a lot of times people, you're keeping your spirit up for yourself. You're keeping that spirit up for your team because your team is also going through this period also, and they're learning to balance what is it like to work with kids at home, or sending kids even worse back to school, right? Especially if you're in Texas where masks are not required in schools, can create a lot of anxiety.
Oh yes,
and how do you keep yourself motivated? Because at times, you feel like you're human, right? You feel that crash of like, oh my gosh, this may actually feel like the day I don't want to get out of bed. It's so hard to get out of bed today. How do you motivate yourself to keep on going and create that energy so that you can not only carry yourself, but carry your team forward?
That's an excellent question. The first answer, part of the answer is I don't fake it. So if I wake up and I say, I really don't feel like getting out of bed today. If I think that, I will say it. I will speak it out. I will tell it to my husband. I will tell it to my best friend. I will tell it to, one of my entrepreneurial colleagues, because this whole fake it till you make it stuff, it's not good for people. So it's important that I'm honest with myself. I try to be very transparent and honest with my clients, with people who follow me on social media. Just because I teach these skills and habits does not mean that I don't go through the entire range of human experience. So there are days, especially in the last 18 months, especially healing from COVID, where I did not want to get up. I did not want to work. I felt severe malaise. I felt that on and off for months now. And it comes and goes like all things, but really I'm honest about it. I'm honest with myself. I'm honest with the people around me. That's number one. Number two, I am always returning back to what we talked about already, which is, why did I decide to do this? And why am I deciding again today to continue to do this? Because it's not a one and done decision. When you open a business, you have to decide all the time to recommit to that business, to recommit to the dream, the goals, the objectives, the team, the clients, the industry you're in. It's constant redeciding. Now, on some days, I'm 110% all in, rah, cheerleader, let's do this. That's my best on some days. My best on other days is maybe 50%. Like, that's the best you're going to get out of me today is 50%, but it's still my best. And I think people also have to realize that your best is going to vary on any given day, and that's okay. It's okay. You don't have to be at 110% every minute of every day. That is not realistic at all. And the other thing is, when I am not feeling terribly rah-rah, terribly high vibe, any of those sorts of things, I don't judge myself for it. I don't slip into self-criticism. I don't slip into just going down the rabbit hole of imposter syndrome and all those other things, because I've really, really trained my mind and my brain very hard over many years to understand that that is a very slippery slope for anybody, and that my time and energy is best spent elsewhere. So if I'm having a particularly bad day, and I know that I'm vulnerable, as all humans are, to that criticism and judgment of self for not being, I'm not being the leader of all leaders today, then I make sure that I direct some of my time and my energy to things that really fill my cup. So a lot of people don't believe this, but I am an introvert. So as social and vocal and verbal as I am, I need a lot of alone time. And when I'm struggling from having a particularly difficult day, I need more of that alone time. So I make sure to carve that out throughout the day. And I also know that for me, laughter is not negotiable. I have to laugh every single day. And so I will seek things out, whether it's friends or funny videos or stand-up comedy or whatever, that bring laughter into my day. Because the truth is, there are some really, really serious things happening in the world. And for a lot of people who are listening, happening in your personal lives right now, and even in your businesses. And we have to find ways to counteract that so we don't succumb to the seriousness of the things that are going on. So I hope that's helpful and answers your question.
No, that's extremely helpful about taking that time and making sure that you refill yourself and give yourself personally what you need, right? Because we all need something very, very different. And who would have thought that Kelly is an introvert?
Nobody ever believes me. And then you meet my family and they're like, oh gosh, yes, leave her alone when she needs to be alone. It's funny.
I haven't seen evidence that Kelly's an introvert yet, but
sorry, I'm an outgoing introvert. Yes.
That is funny. And so Kelly, we're leaders, right? We're leaders, right? We've got team, we've got clients that we're leading, we're leaders. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I have seen during the pandemic that I'm sure others have felt too was, having to carry the weight, right? Having to carry the weight. And particularly with team members that are experiencing it, right? That they're also, they've had family members that may have passed away. They're dealing with now being super mom, super dad at home. And sometimes they don't bring their A game to work or their A attitude to work, right? As leaders, as entrepreneurs, how do we deal with it when our team is affected by, I'm gonna call it pandemic depression, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, it's a principle that I use no matter what's going on. So pandemic or no pandemic, I think this is the way to go. I think it is incredibly important that we bring it back to ourselves. It's very easy to look at your team members and say, they're not doing what they need to be doing. And they're not, they're underperforming or they're whatever. I always bring it back to me and say, what is it that I need to be contributing to this situation to help lift up my team member? And look, sometimes in the end, a team member is just not a match. And if a team member is not a match, you need to let them go. Do not string that along. Don't do that. But when you see that somebody on your team is going through something, one of the most important things you can convey to them is that you're as invested in them as you're asking them to be in your company. So, for example, when I hire a new team member, one of the first things they do in the onboarding process is they go through a getting to know you survey. So I learn about your kids. I know your favorite color. I know your favorite food. I know where you like to shop. I know your guilty pleasure. I know your birthday. I know your mailing address. And I also know your love language, which means I understand how you best receive feedback. So when I see somebody who's struggling, I am always saying, what's going on? What's happening? Not what's wrong with you. So, for example, there is a woman on my team. I adore her and I know her situation. She has a military husband who deploys for very long periods of time. She has a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and the 5-year-old is autistic. And so I'm always saying to her, what can I do to best support you while your husband is away doing training exercises? He's getting ready for an 11-month deployment. So we're going to be talking about how can this company best support you while you're basically operating as a single mother of 2 with no help and with a special needs child. Those are the conversations we have, not how can you be more productive? How can you crank out more? It shows that I am as invested in you as a person as I'm asking you to be in my company. If you can show somebody that, and it's authentic, it's not put on, obviously, there's going to be a lot of buy-in from your team members. So go the extra mile to get to know your people. And if you happen to have a large team, make sure that's part of the training process for your leadership team, that they take the time to get to know the people who are there, that directly report to them. It will make all the difference in the world.
Oh my goodness, that was some true bombs there. Oh my gosh, guys, you just got like $1,000 coaching session right there. Oh my goodness, about like longevity and keeping your A players. Oh my gosh, showing your team that you are as invested in them as you are expecting them to be invested in your own company. Oh my gosh, that is like amazing. So just not just chalking off to let me fire you, or let's have a performance review of you right now and let's do some documentation and write up. But hey, I understand you're going through a hard time right now, and what kind of support do you need? That is some truth bombs that is not talked about and documented on Inc. magazine.
It is not. That is for sure. And the other thing is watch your assumptions, right? Because just true experience thing that happened, my company culture is very connective. It's very authentic. It's very vulnerable. And I went through a time period where people were not telling me truths about things. And I was hearing, oh, they're talking about X, Y, and Z behind your back. And I could have immediately gone to, that's toxic and you're fired and blah, blah, blah. But what ended up happening was I was able to sit down and find out that even though I was saying it's safe for you to come talk to me, it's safe for you to tell me what's going on, it's safe for you to tell me why you are struggling with your time management or executing this particular task. Several of them had come from a corporate background, and that in that corporate background, they had managers or people above them in whatever position who said the same thing. But then when they did it, they did not honor that. They burned them, they humiliated them, they wrote them up, they, did all these things. So here I am thinking, oh, I'm saying and doing the right things, and they're hearing it and I'm repeating it and I'm explicit about it. I couldn't understand for the life of me why they were doing what they were doing. It was going that extra mile to find out, oh, there was actually a trust issue there because 3 of them had the same experience at a different company of hearing that, but then being really humiliated when they trusted and followed through. And we had a team meeting about it. It was corrected and it was not a problem after that. So don't assume things either.
I love it. That is amazing. Amazing. Oh my gosh.
I'm glad that was helpful.
Wow, that is really great. Just really just getting in and understanding their past experience and really just, and calling it out, but not only calling it out, but how do we go forward in a functional way that upbuilds you and upbuilds the company. So that is some really, really great truth bombs. Now, you guys know, you hear Kelly, she is absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. And, one of the things I love to ask, all of our guests, Kelly, is, if you could leave our viewers and our listeners with one piece of advice, and it can be personal, it can be business, what would that advice be?
My number one piece of advice would be right now, this month, this year, whenever you're listening to this, do the work to shift whatever lingering belief you have that you are unworthy or undeserving of what you desire from your business. This is the number one universal limiting unconscious or subconscious belief that I bump into with human beings across the board for 27 years, is that deep down, even though consciously you may think you're very deserving, that deep down there is this fear, doubt, or belief that I am not enough. So therefore I don't deserve to make that much money, have that much time off, have that much freedom, do work that feels wonderful instead of exhausting, whatever it might be, have that great of a team, fill in the blank. There's a million things. Do whatever you have to do. Come work with me, go find somebody else. I don't care who it is, but do whatever you have to do to remove that belief from your unconscious mind, reprogram it, and then change all of your habits that sabotage you, your team, and your business as the result of that belief.
I love that. And it's true. It does take work. We're programmed, especially, as a woman, I can say this to serve, right? Mm-hmm. And, it takes a lot of work, to own that you belong here, that you deserve the good things that are coming to you. And for me, it took working with Kelly in order to change that. So definitely, just like Kelly said, do the work, because you cannot grow your business, you cannot expand until you are open for that expansion and can receive that expansion and receive those gifts, right? Because otherwise you'll be closed off, and even our body language, right, turns away those gifts if we feel that we're not deserving of them, right? So definitely do the work. As Kelly said, you cannot scale a business until you know that you are stepping into the place that you belong.
Beautifully put, my dear. Beautifully put.
So Kelly, tell us, how do we reach you? How do we work with you?
I am so easy to find. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. My website is currently being rebuilt, but you can find me through there. It's simply kellyruta.com. And I answer all my own messages, or you can send an email in to info@kellyruta.com and just say, hey, I'd love to hear more. And we will get you set up with whatever you need. So reach out.
She is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And what I'm going to do is I have Kelly's contact information. I'm going to put that in the show notes. So you guys just scroll down a little bit further and you'll be able to click in order to get her email address and her website so that you can contact her to work with her. Thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Susanne.